Mr. President, in recent weeks, we've seen an astonishing series of revelations about Russia's efforts to influence the 2016 election in support of the Donald Trump campaign. Last week, the Washington Post reported that Attorney General Jeff Sessions met with the Russian ambassador in July and September during the campaign. Yet, during his confirmation hearing, the Attorney General said, and I quote, incidentally said this under oath, and I quote, "I did not have communications with the Russians," close quote. Then last Thursday, the Attorney General announced he would partially recuse himself from any investigation into the presidential campaign. I note this was a partial recusal when it comes to investigations into Russia's influence on President Trump and his circle of advisors and associates. The scope of the recusal is still unclear. For example, Attorney General Sessions does not even appear to believe that his own meeting with the Russian ambassador on September 8, 2016 was related to the campaign. The scope of his recusal will need to be clarified. We also continue to learn of previously undisclosed communications between the Russians and President Trump's inner circle. For example, we learned last week that Jared Kushner, Mr. Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor, had met in December with the Russian ambassador in the Trump Tower, along with the president's national security advisor, Michael Flynn, who resigned on February 13th. People across America are wondering when the next shoe will drop. It is becoming clear that the president is desperate to change the headlines from these Russian revelations. So desperate that, in fact, in a series of tweets on Sunday morning, President Trump claimed that President Obama had wiretapped Trump Tower in an act that President Trump described as, quote, McCarthyism and, quote, Nixon Watergate. Well, President Trump's tweets again made news, but not in the way he had hoped. It quickly became clear that President Trump has no evidence to back up his claims. In fact, it appeared he got his information not from America's law enforcement or intelligence agencies, but from right-wing talk radio. On Sunday, the former director of national intelligence, James Clapper, denied the president's claims. And the director of the FBI, James Comey, took an extraordinary step, calling on the Justice Department to publicly deny the president's claims. Even Republicans like House Oversight Chairman Jason Chaffetz and Trey Gowdy, the chairman of the Select Committee on Benghazi, said they've not seen any evidence that would support what President Trump tweeted. Nonetheless, the president's spokespeople doubled down, saying that the president does not accept the contention of the FBI director, and he stands by his tweets. Let's be clear. President Trump is playing games with the credibility of his presidency. Donald Trump is destroying the credibility of the office of the president 140 characters at a time. If President Trump had consulted with his advisor, any advisor, credible advisor, prior to his tweets, he would have learned something that is crucial, and it is as follows. The President of the United States does not have the authority to order a wiretap. Instead, such a wiretap can be granted upon a finding by a court that there was probable cause to believe that the target has committed a crime or is an agent of a foreign power. Clearly, there are more revelations to come. The only question, how long is it going to take? How much damage will be done to the credibility of the office of the president and America in the process? These recent events confirm yet again the need for an independent, transparent, bipartisan commission led by Americans of unimpeachable integrity to get to the bottom of this Russian attack on the United States. Russia attacked our democracy. We need to fully understand what happened. We need to certainly prevent it from happening in the next election or ever again. This week, a USA Today Suffolk University poll found that Americans, by a margin of 58 to 35%, believe an outside independent investigation is needed into Russian involvement in our election. It is worthy of note that just a few weeks ago, only 37% of the American people were aware of this controversy with Russia. Now the number is over 55%. America is listening. We also need the Justice Department and the FBI to proceed with a credible, impartial investigation to determine if there may have been any criminal conduct involved. The President's nominee for Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, appeared yesterday before the Senate Judiciary Committee. If confirmed, Mr. Rosenstein would oversee any Justice Department investigation into the Trump administration's Russian connections after Attorney General Sessions has partially recused himself. So I pressed Mr. Rosenstein to clarify the scope of Attorney General Sessions' recusal commitment. I also asked, as Senator Feinstein did, whether Mr. Rosenstein had read the January 6 Intelligence Committee assessment into Russian election interference. I cannot explain it, but Mr. Rosenstein, in 2 months, had not read this 15-page unclassified report that is available on the internet. It focuses on the major issue that he will face initially as Deputy Attorney General, and he told us that he had not read it. Now let me add quickly, I respect Rod Rosenstein. He has served as U.S. Attorney in Maryland, appointed first under a Republican president, held over under a Democratic president, and that says a lot about his professionalism as a prosecutor, his reputation, and his integrity. It is just hard for me to imagine or believe that he could come before a hearing which he knew would focus on the need for a special prosecutor to look into this Russian interference and not have been briefed to read the 15-page public report that summarizes the conclusions of all of America's intelligence agencies when it comes to this Russian interference. I'm sure he is an excellent lawyer, wouldn't enter a courtroom or stand before a judge or jury without complete preparation to the best of his ability. But yesterday, time and again, he told us he didn't take the time to read this report. I urge him to do so as quickly as possible. And when he reads it, he will see that our intelligence agencies are unequivocal in their statement that Vladimir Putin was setting out to elect Donald Trump and to defeat Hillary Clinton. This is not a report from the Democratic National Committee. It's a report from our intelligence agencies. And whoever Putin was trying to help, that is secondary to the fact that he was hacking into internets, disclosing materials, trying to become a material player in our presidential election. Mr. President, 3 weeks ago, I went to visit Poland, Lithuania, and Ukraine. They are watching this carefully because they have been the victims of Vladimir Putin and Russia's attempt to interfere in their elections. And now they hear the United States has been victimized by Putin as well. One of the scholars in Poland said to me what I thought was a very clear question, and really I can't answer. He said, if the United States will not take the interference of Putin in your election seriously, how can the people of Poland believe that you will take your NATO commitment to protect us from Putin seriously? Important question, valid question. There are exceptions on the Republican side of the aisle, and I would like to at least point out one of them. My friend, my colleague, and the chairman of the Foreign Operations Subcommittee of Appropriations, Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, made an extraordinary forthright statement yesterday about the need for an investigation into this Russian interference. Thank goodness he is stepping up, stepping away from party loyalty and stepping up when it comes to defending this nation. I salute my Republican colleague for his leadership on this issue. Mr. President, it's important to step back from the daily dysfunction that we have when it comes to the Russian investigation and the White House and lack of governing to remember what is really at stake. 5 months ago, our intelligence services disclosed evidence that a foreign adversary, one ruled by dictatorial former communist KGB agent, was trying to help its preferred candidate in the U.S. presidential election. Think about that for a moment. An adversary of the United States, a country that has imprisoned millions of Europeans in the communist system for almost half a century, and that today rigs elections and silences or murders members of the media and opposition, committed what I believe is akin to a cyber act of war against America, trying to elect someone they saw as more sympathetic to their interest. Since those early reports, we've been provided with damning evidence by our intelligence agencies on the depth and sophistication of this operation, so favorable to its nefarious goal that it had Russian intelligence operatives boastfully celebrating the outcome of the election. We also know that members of President Trump's campaign met with those thought to be Russian intelligence, had suspiciously timed communications with the Russian government just after the Obama administration placed sanctions on Russia, and in cases of the top Trump advisors, Michael Flynn and Jeff Sessions, refused to disclose those meetings, both to the public, in one case to the Vice President, in another case to the Senate Judiciary Committee. Mr. President, no candidate would, or at least should, want help from a foreign dictator to help win political office in the United States. So in a situation like this, the response is obvious. Help in any way possible to clear suspicions and concerns. Go forward and serve the American people with an investigation. It seems so obvious. Leon Panetta was on one of the Sunday morning talk shows. Leon Panetta is a friend. I served with him in the House of Representatives. He's been chief of staff to the President of the United States under President Clinton. He served as Secretary of Defense, and he headed up the Central Intelligence Agency. He's an extraordinarily gifted and well thought out person who has a record of public service that is enviable. And he was asked about what the Trump White House should do about this allegation of Russian interference in the election and the suggestion that they might have been complicit. He said, get out in front. The President of the United States should say, I have nothing to hide, and we will fully cooperate with an independent commission that gets to the bottom of what happened in that election. But instead, what do we have? Fanciful, in fact, patently false tweets by the President alleging a wiretap by a former president. President Trump, if he has nothing to hide, should help us clear this up once and for all. To my Republican colleagues, so many patriots and champions of American national security, it's time for more to join Senator Graham and others. Step up and speak up, even on the floor of the Senate, about this situation. Each one of us in the Senate swore to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against enemies, foreign and domestic. Clearly, the Russian attack is a call for all of us, of both political parties, to step up. This issue is not going to go away. We are going to continue to pursue the truth.